They said it would be an honor to host a delegation. Honor. That's a polite way of saying we were expected to grovel. I stood on the wind-swept tarmac of Luna Forward Base, the Earth flag pressed on my shoulder by the breeze coming off the dark side of the moon. My armor gleamed under the artificial sunlight cast by orbital reflectors. Around me stood 12 of Earth's finest, soldiers, diplomats, scientists, the best humanity had to offer. And across from us, the so-called best of the Vicar Empire. Their ship was sleek, black as obsidian and shaped like a predatory bird, wings swept forward in permanent attack posture. A single ramp descended with theatrical slowness, steam hissing from vents along the hull. It was all calculated intimidation. Classic Empire theatrics. We were meant to be impressed. We weren't. The first figure to emerge was nearly 8 feet tall, clad in ceramite battle armor etched with glowing glyphs. Her eyes, 6 of them, scanned us like prey. I knew her name before she spoke it. Martial Executor Zev Kalla, the Empire's most decorated war commander, slayer of the Thrashing Horde, breaker of the Zent Gates. She had reduced planets to ash for lesser insults than what we were about to do. Behind her came a formation of equally terrifying soldiers, an honor guard elites genetically sculpted for war, their weapons fused to their very limbs, their presence radiating arrogance. Zev Kalla stepped forward and spoke in that perfectly modulated, condescending tone every Imperial seemed born with. We are here to test your species' claim of readiness. Your council demanded independence. You wish to stand among equals? Then prove your worth. I could feel the tension ripple through my team. None of us moved. Not yet. I took a slow step forward. My boots clicked against the polished lunar alloy. I stopped just shy of her shadow. We've been ready, I said. But if it's a test you want, don't complain about the results. Her eyes narrowed. One of her guards twitched, too fast for most to see. But I saw it. So did Riley, my second. His fingers danced at his side, subtle code we'd trained for. We knew this wouldn't be diplomatic. Not really. It never was with the Empire. Zev Kalla turned, gesturing toward the massive sphere now hovering just behind her ship. It was a mobile arena, gravitationally stabilized, atmospherically regulated, equipped with a dozen combat environments within. Your champions. Our champions. No weapons but what you bring in your mind and body. The first of all. Loses. I finished for her. She smiled with too many teeth. You understand more than you appear to. We get that a lot. The briefing had said this might happen. A trial-by-combat style evaluation cloaked in tradition. The Empire liked pageantry and hierarchy. But what they didn't understand was that humans don't train for tradition. We train to win. I turned to my team. For we're coming with me, Riley, Lynn, Marcus, and Daya. Each had seen hell. Some twice. We weren't the biggest. We didn't have integrated plasma claws or subdermal armor. But we had something the Empire never did. Adaptability. We entered the sphere in silence. The moment we passed through the shimmering veil at the entrance, I felt the pressure change. The environment inside had shifted. A dense jungle with triple canopy foliage, high humidity, and low visibility. Zev Kalla's voice echoed across the chamber. Round 1. Survival. Begin. The arena sealed, and somewhere in the darkness, we heard the first scream. Jungle. Real or simulated. It didn't matter. This one was alive. Too alive. Thick. Alien vines dangled like nooses. The air was wet with sap and mist, and something high in the canopy screamed like it had been born just to make noise. Every breath felt like inhaling boiling syrup. My visor adjusted, shifting thermal readings into tactical overlays. Behind me, Riley muttered, feels like Vietnam had a bastard child with Venus. Daya's chuckle was low, bitter, except the mosquitoes here carry plasma stingers. He wasn't kidding. One of those things that just zipped past my shoulder, fast as a bullet, nearly invisible. Lynn shot at mid-flight, her sidearm silent but effective. We all heard the sizzling splatter hit the underbrush. But we didn't stop. Couldn't, because we weren't alone. The Empire's champions weren't just brawlers. They were engineered apex predators. A new breed every year. They trained in gravity wells that could crush bone, survived on poison atmospheres, and bled acid just for the fun of it. We were human, soft, squishy, bipedal apes, but we were smart. I signaled a halt beneath a thick canopy of spiral frond ferns. The jungle filtered what little light there was into shifting, confusing beams. Perfect for a trap or an ambush. I drew a quick map with my fingertip against the wrist display. 5 exits. Narrow field. 2 exposed. I needed a kill box. And that's when we heard it. No, felt it. Heavy thumps. The rustle of enormous weight being careful. Riley spotted it first. Contact. Big one. Left flank. Through a gap in the foliage, a creature stepped into view. It was one of their own, a Draker. I'd read the file. 12 feet tall. Heavy armor. 4 arms. Bone-hued plates. It looked like a cross between a centaur and a tank. Its eyes locked onto me. No words. Just a sound. Something between a hiss and a growl. And it charged. I didn't move. Instead, I whistled. Marcus, 2 trees above, dropped a surprise package. A fusion-powered cutting net. It snapped to life in midair, entangling the Draker before it could reach us. The creature screamed, flailed, and sliced at it, but it was too late. Riley followed with a short burst from a concussive launcher. The Draker slammed into the ground with a bone-crunching thud. Dead silence. And then applause. Slow, deliberate, mocking. The trees parted, and there she was, Zevkala herself, standing atop a root bridge 20 meters above, watching. Her armor shimmered with reactive camouflage, phasing in and out. She hadn't intervened. She'd been observing. Interesting. Primitive tactics. Coordinated. Brutal. Thanks, I replied. You're next. Her smile widened. Not yet, little primate. There are more toys for you first. Behind her, the jungle twisted, shifted, and changed. Trees uprooted. Stone rose from the earth. The arena was reconfiguring. That's when I realized this wasn't just a fight. It was a gauntlet. She wanted to see what it took to break us. We regrouped. Lynn patched Marcus. He'd taken a thorn to the leg. Not poisonous, but deep. I scanned ahead. New terrain, broken ruins, low visibility. Traps everywhere. Urban combat rules. I smiled. This was our turf now. Remember Fallujah Protocol? I said. The others grinned. No more formation. We scattered. Ghost mode. Silent, precise, lethal. It took minutes. We disabled 3 more of their champions. Not killed, neutralized. One got flash-fried by an overcharged generator we triggered as bait. Another got funneled into a blind alley, where Riley dropped a thermal blade down from the rafters. The last? Daya lured it into a pit camouflage with nanofabric and filled with neurotoxin spores we'd extracted from the first part of the jungle. They thought they were hunting animals. Instead, they met hunters. By the time we reached the 3rd stage, our suits were covered in grime blood. Some ours, most theirs, and our breathing was labored, but we were still standing. Then the calm crackled. A new voice. Female. Calm. Calculated. Human squad. Stand down. Trial pause initiated. Return to extraction point for evaluation. We didn't move. Who's giving that order? I asked. Imperial Arbiter Kael'Zir. Zevkala has requested your performance be reviewed. I looked up at the holographic dome above us. Faces stared down. Imperial officers, tacticians, a few scientists. And one was recording. This wasn't a test. It was a demonstration. And we were the damn exhibit. Fine, I growled. But tell the Arbiter one thing. Go ahead. This wasn't us trying. This was us warming up. That's not a metaphor. After the pause, they shuttled us in the arena into a clear-walled observation cube suspended above the arena floor, 12 meters wide. No weapons, no privacy. Surrounded on all sides by Imperial officers, watching us like curious scientists watching lab rats. We were bloody, dirty, smiling. I leaned against the wall and stared down at the next test environment forming below. Desert this time. Collapsing sand dunes, ancient wreckage half buried, heat rising in shimmering waves. It was all theater. Zevkala wanted to break us in public, make us bend, then parade us like broken tools. She didn't understand. We don't break in public. We break everything else. The calm snapped to life. The Arbiter's voice again, crisp and clinical. Human Unit Alpha 7, your performance has exceeded projections. Marshal Executive Zevkala has requested an escalation. You may withdraw now and be commended for your survival. Riley laughed so hard he choked. That's it? Survive and go home. Correct. The Empire considers your species spirited, but unevolved, tactical but crude, a curiosity. Say that again, I said, stepping forward. Slower. You may withdraw, the Arbiter repeated, and avoid the final trial. Lynn cracked her neck. Translation, they didn't expect us to survive. Now they're scared of what happens if we win. Daya looked around. They want us to blink. Riley leaned in, whispering just loud enough. So let's keep our eyes wide open. Request denied, I said. Proceed with the next round. There was a pause. Tension tightened the air like a wire about to snap. Acknowledged, came the cold reply. Let it be recorded that the humans chose this. The observation deck hissed open. We stepped out into the heat. The desert hit like a hammer. 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Low oxygen. No wind. The kind of place that cooked you alive from the inside. They sent the Zarkin this time. 6 of them. Heavy exochitin armor. 6 legs, 2 arms, eyes like polished stone. I'd read about them in the files, siege breakers, designed for planetary insertion and extermination. No mercy, no surrender, no thought, and they ran toward us like thunder incarnate. We didn't run. Instead, we scattered wide. Human unpredictability. That's our favorite tactic. You can simulate 1,000 battle plans, but you can't predict madness. I dove under the wreck of a downed skimmer, rolled into shadows, and waited. Marcus scaled a nearby dune, positioning the solar lens he'd been hiding since the first phase. Lynn crouched in the sand, motionless as death. Riley? He was already charging. That idiot smiled as he ran headfirst at a monster 4 times his size. He knew what he was doing. He ducked at the last second, fired a flash burst right into Zarkin's face cluster, and dove away. Daya's voice cut across our channel. Now, now, now! The lens ignited. Sunlight amplified through smart glass, condensed into a beam so intense it melted armor. The lead Zarkin screamed, a horrible grinding sound, and collapsed, twitching. We pounced. Humans fight dirty because war is dirty. We blinded them with heat, disoriented them with concussive echoes, lured them into sand traps we carved with scavenged skimmer turbines. One by one they fell, but not without a cost. Marcus caught a shard of armor across the ribs. His breathing was shallow. He refused evac. Not until they fall, he muttered, blood bubbling in his mouth. We honored that. The last Zarkin tried to retreat. It had never encountered prey that fought back. Riley mounted its back and drove a shard of its own chitin into the base of its neck, riding it to the ground like a dying bull. Silence followed. Sand, blood, the shimmer of heat and horror, and then cheers? Above us, the Imperial spectators clapped. Stiff, uncertain, confused. Zevkala was not clapping. She stood like a statue, her 6 eyes unreadable, her mouth a hard line. Enough, she said over the loudspeakers. You've made your point. I looked up at her. My voice rasped through the heat. We haven't even started. They didn't take us back to the cube this time. They put us in a chamber, stone walls, ceremonial guards, and 1 long obsidian table. Across from us sat the Imperial High Strategist, the Arbiter, and Marshal Executor Zevkala herself. You have defied expectations, she said, voice heavy with resentment. No unaugmented species has ever completed the Imperial trials. We weren't trying to impress you, Lynn replied, eyes locked on the strategist. We were proving a point, which is, I leaned forward. That human smile right before we crush you. No one laughed. You've drawn attention. the arbiter said. From those far above me, and far more dangerous. Then tell them, I said. Tell them to stop sending monsters. I stood, staring Zevkala in all six of her eyes. Because every time you send your best, we'll send them back broken. I thought we'd reached the top of the mountain. I was wrong. After the trials, we expected to be escorted back to Earth, debriefed, decorated, maybe paraded a little like trophies. But instead, they loaded us into a black shuttle. No insignia, no windows, and we launched into silence. No destination, no explanation. We weren't being celebrated. We were being taken somewhere secret. Somewhere they didn't want anyone else to see. 2 hours passed in void black silence. Then gravity shifted. I felt a brief surge and a sharp descent. When a hatch finally opened, we stood inside a docking cradle carved into a jagged asteroid. And beyond it, a gate, not just a portal, a breach. Fractured reality folded on itself, held together by machines older than the Empire itself. Zevkala waited there, alone now, her ceremonial armor traded for something leaner, sleeker, built for speed and violence. Where are we? I asked. Beyond the edge, she replied. This station is not mapped. No signals leave. You are not being recorded. Lynn narrowed her eyes. You're hiding us. No, Zevkala said. I'm giving you a final chance to understand. She gestured to the breach. Through there is why the Empire exists. Why we fight. Why we fear. Fear what? Daya asked. The first war. She stepped aside, and we walked through. It was a void. Not like space, colder. Quieter. Like something older than stars had erased sound and warmth. We stood on a platform of fused bone and metal, suspended in an endless black sea. Towers rose like teeth, half-eaten by time, and scattered across the platform were the remains of things. Not aliens, not machines, something in between. Their bodies were long since fossilized, but their presence still whispered. My skin crawled with ancient echoes. There were scratches on the walls, claw marks, some over a meter deep. These are not imperial ruins, Zevkala said. They predate us. They predate you. The Vaikar Empire rose only because we were the ones who survived what was left. Survived what? She looked at me. For the first time, her voice faltered. The ones who didn't die. The ones who wait. Suddenly, a tremor rippled through the void. The walls groaned. Something massive shifted deep in the shadows. Marcus whispered, We're not alone. And then I saw it. A shape, vague, towering, wrong. Not walking. Not flying. More like it was unfolding, dimension by dimension, like reality couldn't decide what shape to give it. I stepped back. What the hell is that? It's what we buried, what we swore never to name again. Zevkala activated a beacon on her wrist. A ghostly hologram flickered to life. Dozens of empires, species, banners long since erased. We weren't always your enemy. Once we stood together, and still we almost lost. The creature moved closer, not charging, studying, curious. My HUD glitched, every sensor overloaded. My heart pounded like war drums in my chest. Then it spoke, not in words, but through feeling, like drowning in memories that weren't mine. Regret, hunger, hatred. It didn't hate us because of what we were. It hated us because we were alive. And then it faded, back into the void. And silence returned. Zevkala turned, face grim. The trials weren't to test your strength. They were to see if you were ready. For what? Lynn asked. For the day that thing wakes up. And when it does, the Empire cannot win. I stepped forward. And you want us to fight it? No, I want you to teach us how to survive it. We stood there, 5 humans surrounded by death, invited to teach the most powerful empire in the galaxy how to fight their gods. I looked at my team. Daya's lips curled. Riley raised a brow. Lynn nodded once. And Marcus, still bleeding, still standing, smiled. First lesson, I said, you don't survive a war like this by following orders. You win it by becoming something worse than what's coming. We returned to the real universe in silence. Not one of us said a word as we exited that cursed breach. Not even Riley. And he once made a joke during orbital reentry, while his heat shield was on fire. What we'd seen, it wasn't just ancient, it was patient. And now the Empire, so arrogant just days ago, was asking us, the upstart apes from a blue rock at the edge of the void, to teach them how not to die screaming when it returned. Back at the asteroid facility, we were escorted to a new chamber, part war room, part simulation deck, part shrine. Dozens of species were present now. Imperial strategists, data architects, biomechanical engineers. All eyes turned to us as we entered. Some looked curious. Others looked afraid. But one thing had changed completely. They no longer looked down. Zevkala stood at the center of it all, no longer our judge, now our peer. She turned, and for the first time, bowed her head slightly. A deaf-worlder nod. The kind that said, "You earned it. Begin," she said. So we did. The first lesson was about pain. You don't learn it in theory. You learn it through failure. We threw the Empire's elite into their own war scenarios, but with one change. Human unpredictability. I rewrote their simulations to include insurgents, misinformation, biological sabotage, and good old-fashioned chaos. Not a single one of their warlords lasted more than 20 minutes against our methods. Lynn taught them about soft targets, how psychological warfare didn't need a single shot. She made an Imperial strategist break down in tears just by mimicking his own chain of command and issuing contradictory orders. Dia taught camouflage, not cloaking fields, not refractive plating, just being unseen. She once disappeared in a hangar bay for 3 hours, only to emerge from behind the very admiral lecturing us on detection grids. Marcus, bandaged but alive, handled field adaptability. He jury-rigged a fusion core, a trip mine, and a gravity suppressor into a self-guiding demolition unit. From a broken toaster and a shoe. And Riley? He taught them fear. He volunteered to fight one of their gladiator-class elites in a zero-gravity dome with no weapons. He won, barehanded, by suffocating it with its own armor, rerouting its cooling fluid, and whispering nursery rhymes into its comms until it panicked. The spectators were silent for minutes afterward, but it wasn't just tactics. It was philosophy. The Empire bred loyalty through strength, obedience, unquestioning order. Humanity? We bred monsters by accident. We showed them Earth's past. Wars fought for nothing. Cities leveled out of spite. Weapons made end the concept of war entirely. We showed them Hiroshima, Verdun, Fallujah, the fires of London, the ruins of Aleppo, the Battle of Titan Gate, and the quiet cemeteries that always followed. One young Imperial scholar asked me, "How did your species survive such madness?" I looked her dead in the eye. We didn't. We evolved through it. And that's when the real question came. The strategist general of the Vicar Empire leaned forward at the command table, voice low. "Do you believe we can defeat what sleeps beyond a breach?" "No," I said. "Not if you fight it like an empire." "Then how?" I looked at my team. We weren't polished. We weren't perfect. We weren't even the best humans out there. But we were free. And more importantly, we were angry. You beat it by becoming something worse. Worse than that. Zevkala asked, gesturing toward the void. "Yes," I said, stepping closer. "You become human. You adapt. You sabotage. You make it bleed in ways it doesn't understand. And when it thinks it's winning, you pull into the fire with you and smile." The room fell into stunned silence. Then, slowly, one by one, the Imperials began nodding. It wasn't agreement. It was understanding. That night, while the others rested, I stood alone in the simulated battlefield chamber. A replica of Earth's Great War trenches surrounded me. Mud, fire, the ghosts of screams that had never been programmed in. Zevkala approached quietly. "There's talk of unity now," she said. "Of an alliance." "Talk is easy," I replied. "They're frightened." "Good. They should be." She studied me for a moment. "You humans, you frighten me." I turned to her. "Then you're starting to get it." She laughed softly. And what frightens you, human? I looked past her, into the stars. The day we stop being afraid is the day we become the thing you saw beyond that breach. It began with a whisper through the stars. An anomaly at the edge of Sector Tyros 9. A black signal one node system was designed to interpret. Frequencies folded into quantum static. No words. No language. Just presence. By the time the Empire scout vessels reached the coordinates, it was too late. The moon they'd been assigned to investigate was gone. Not destroyed. Not shattered. Gone. Replaced by a perfect sphere of midnight alloy, floating silently in the void. No energy readings. No life signs. But when they got too close, their ships vanished too, swallowed without a sound. And then, as if to announce its intent, the sphere pulsed once. Across thousands of light years, everything it touched woke up. Derelict war machines buried for eons stirred from the sands of dead worlds. Time-locked vaults cracked open. The edges of uncharted space flared with magnetic distortions. We didn't know if it was a declaration of war or the opening of a prison, but we knew it had begun. Alarms screamed across the asteroid station as we suited up. Not a drill, not a test. Contact, and not in some distant, abstract system either. They came here. We'd spent the last week training Imperials on how to think like humans. Now we were about to find out if they'd learned anything. Multiple contacts inbound. Gaia shouted, throwing a plasma cartridge into her harness. Subspace ruptures. Looks like 9 breaches. Zevkala stormed into the command deck, her armor already activated, eyes blazing. We need to fall back. We can't defend this station against whatever's coming. No, I said flatly. We make our stand here. Riley raised a brow. Boss, I like suicidal last stands as much as the next guy, but maybe explain the plan before we start writing our own obituaries? I pulled up the 3D tactical overlay. This station isn't just rock. It's wired into the old defense grid. Pre-Empire. Anti-Eldritch tech. Lynn whistled. You mean those ancient war engines the Empire deemed too disturbing to reactivate? I nodded. They weren't afraid they didn't work. They were afraid they did. We split into teams. Riley and Lynn took engineering to reroute power and override the safety locks. Dia and Marcus moved to the armory to reprogram the ancient drones buried beneath the station. I led the Imperial Defense Force to the outer hull. I'd never seen so many species fall into formation behind a human before. That alone told me the galaxy had changed. And then the void opened. It didn't roar. It didn't flash. It unfolded. A wave of darkness spilled through real space, dragging gravity like chains behind it. And from it came forms. Tall, narrow, endlessly shifting. Eyes with no faces. Limbs made of smoke and blades. Their presence made lesser minds convulse. A few Imperials dropped where they stood, screaming, but we held, because humans train in madness. The first wave came fast. Too fast. Half of the century, guns never fired. The creatures ignored physics, phasing through kinetic barriers like mist. But we prepared for that. We didn't aim for bodies. We aimed for patterns. Riley's AI net flagged their shape sequences in real time. Each time they blinked between states, they left a sliver of anchor mass behind, just enough for Lynn's gravitic minds to grab hold. And when they got grabbed, we taught them pain. Thousands of drones burst from the cratered walls, screaming across the vacuum in tight, disciplined formations. Marcus's programming burned into their tiny metal brains, swarming like hornets, sacrificing themselves if needed. Death delivered at the speed of thought. But the creatures adapted. By the second wave, they changed form again, became faster. Angles bent backward. Light bent toward them instead of away. Dia fired an experimental railcaster we hadn't even finished testing. The bolt screamed as it tore through 3 at once. Still not enough. The command deck cracked. The hull fractured. We lost the upper wing. Bodies, human, Imperial, floated away into the dark, lifeless and frozen. But we kept fighting, because humans don't surrender. Not to empires. Not to gods. Especially not to monsters who thought fear was a weapon. I activated the final protocol. Not a weapon. A message, buried in the core of the station, deeper than anything the Empire had ever known, was a fragment of code. Old Earth, translated from something we found on a dead colony decades ago. I broadcast it. A loop. We see you. We remember. We are coming. The effect was immediate. The invaders stopped. Mid-attack, mid-shift, they froze. And then they screamed. Not sound. Something deeper. A psychic rupture across the battlefield. Everyone, human and alien alike, dropped to one knee, hands to temples. Even Zev Kalla staggered. But I stood, because the scream wasn't meant for us. It was meant for whatever sent the message. And whatever had written it long before us was still out there, still hunting. The entities vanished in an instant. The void closed like an eye that realized it had been seen. Silence returned. The survivors rose, blinking. Zev Kalla looked at me, voice hoarse. What was that? I holstered my weapon. A warning. Hours later, after the dead were honored and the defenses rebuilt, I sat in the war chamber alone, staring at the stars. Riley joined me. Quiet. They didn't expect us to win, he said. No, I replied. They expected us to beg. He grinned. So what now? I leaned back. Now they send envoys. Riley raised a brow. From the other empires? He asked. I shook my head slowly. No, from Earth. The ship that arrived didn't come with flags. No pageantry. No horned figurehead. Just a matte black hull that swallowed light, marked only by an old Earth sigil etched in quiet defiance. A raven with burning wings wrapped around a fractured world. Echelon 9. A Ghost Fleet-class dreadnought. Humanity's unspoken last resort. It hadn't been seen since the Orion incursion. And even then, only in aftermath reports and classified footage, where empires had tried to erase what they didn't understand. Now it floated above the Imperial Station, like judgment cast in alloy and silence. The Empire's delegates stood frozen in the docking bay. Even Zev Kalla looked unsure. Then the ramp lowered. They expected soldiers. Maybe diplomats. What stepped out was a child. Maybe 13. Brown skin. Bright eyes. Hair pulled into a tight coil. She walked with perfect calm, unafraid, and behind her strode four humans in dark coats with no names, no insignias. Not because they had none, but because everyone already knew who they were. Ghost Protocol. Unregistered. Untraceable. Humanity's myth made flesh. The child stepped forward and looked directly at Zev Kalla. Are you the one who tested my people? Zev Kalla's eyes narrowed. I am. And who are you? I'm Mia, the girl said simply. Earth sent me to answer your last question. The war room fell into stunned silence. Riley, standing beside me, leaned in. What question? I answered before I even realized it. Whether we can survive what's coming. Mia stepped into the center of the chamber and lifted her hand. Her escort tapped a command into a console, and the chamber's walls lit up with a star map. One by one, red markers flared across it. Not Imperial territory. Not ours. Not claimed by anyone. These systems, she said, pointing, have already gone silent. The Empire's strategist blinked. We haven't received reports. Because they didn't leave any witnesses. The lights shifted. Now it showed simulations. The void creatures evolving, feeding, spawning new variants. Faster, smarter, building shapes that bent causality. Some even beginning to speak. They're learning, Mia said quietly. And they remember us. Then we must prepare, Zev Kalla said. Train, build, expand our fleet. Mia shook her head. No. She turned to look at us. Humans, aliens, all. This isn't a war we prepare for. This is a war we were built for. Her voice didn't tremble. Her words weren't proud. They were true. You didn't understand why Earth survived. Why we thrived on a death world. Why your best couldn't break us. But the void does. She tapped the hollow map, and the image of the sphere, the one from Tyros 9, reappeared. That was an invasion. It was a question. The Imperial Arbiter spoke at last. Then what is your answer, child of Earth? Mia smiled, and it chilled every being in the room. Send more. The following weeks rewrote galactic history. For the first time in known time, humanity wasn't just invited into the council. They were given equal command. Entire species pledged allegiance not to flags, but to the strategy of survival. Ghost Protocol operatives embedded across allied fleets. Earth's engineers rewrote Starship doctrines, embedding chaos theory into battlefield tactics. And at the heart of it all, us. 5 humans who walked into an Imperial trial meant to humiliate us and came out leading the war to save them all. Lynn joined the Intergalactic Recon Network, designing infiltration units based on Earth's animal camouflage. Dia trained hybrid forces in sabotage, teaching species who had never even heard of a wrench how to collapse supply lines with chewing gum and spite. Marcus stayed behind, overseeing the station's defense protocols, quietly rebuilding the old weapons that scared even our own generals. Riley? He vanished with a grin and a note. If the monsters adapt, so will I. Don't come looking. And me? I became a voice, a warning, a myth in motion. They still tell stories in the bars of the outer colonies, about the day the Empire sent its best to break the humans, about how the humans smiled back and broke them instead, and how, in the blackest silence between galaxies, something watched, and finally saw something watching back.